Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Recently, we've seen a lot of tournaments being won using a drop shot. We know how fantastic a drop shot is. And in my opinion, a lot of times one of the most key elements to drop shot fishing goes completely overlooked. Whether we're talking about hooks or worms or leader length, those are all very important when it comes to choosing the right components of your drop shot. But we don't hear enough discussion regarding the weights that are being used to fish a drop shot. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to get into a little bit about why you should throw maybe a lead drop shot weight or a tungsten drop shot weight, as well as the shapes of your weight. I think there are a lot of advantages to using one over the other that oftentimes are not discussed. So I'm going to go over some of the reasons why I would choose certain shapes, certain weights of my drop shot weights. Before I do get into those, I want to remind you that if you want to support the channel, guys, and you're looking to make some tackle purchases, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that I put in the video description. Every little bit of support really helps to grow the channel because I put the few dollars that I make from that right back into making content with tips like this. All right, so right now we definitely have seen a lot of drop shots come into play for the smallmouth events that are occurring during the Bassmaster Elite Series. But honestly, a drop shot plays year round throughout the country. And because of that, we're using drop shots in a lot of different types of water. Could be a river, could be a natural lake, could be a man-made lake, could be your Ozark type lakes. It really can come into play throughout the entire country. But because of that, you're talking about lots of different types of water, which means there's a lot of variables to take into account when choosing your weight. Now, for me specifically, I've gone almost entirely to your cylinder type shaped drop shot weights. This one right here is just a straight cylinder. This is the tapered tungsten weight. This is a Picasso weight. I really like both of these shapes. Generally speaking, the first weight style that came out with drop shots was a round ball design. But I got to tell you, with a round ball design, the only time I really like to throw that is if I'm fishing rivers with pretty swift current where I want my bait to roll along the bottom. Generally speaking, I feel like that round ball shape will hurt you when it comes to the presentation that you're making. So the only time I really throw round ball anymore are fishing rivers or current situations. So I generally tend to go with a cylinder style shape like this. And the reason for that really just comes down to the fact that if I'm fishing grass, this will go in and out of the grass better than a round ball. If I'm fishing around wood, the same thing happens. It'll slide down into the wood better and come out of the wood better. Uh, it's just one of those things where the same thing with rocks. If you get a round ball down wedged into rock cracks, generally speaking, that ball shape will get you stuck. With a cylinder shape, it might go into the crack, but it also come out of the crack much easier. So you don't lose nearly as many drop shot weights. Now, another thing I want to point out, and I've talked about this as a tip in previous videos, like with this Picasso tapered cylinder shape, you can see it comes with a swivel eye mounted into it. Now, in my opinion, that's a huge bonus versus your standard drop shot style little pinch weights like this right here, where you can see I've left the tag end hanging out. The idea being that when you pull, that will pinch your line and break off. Generally speaking, I don't feel like that works really well. And more than anything, in this case, if you tie a knot to it, which generally holds better, or even with your line coming off the side of it, a lot of times that will actually increase the amount of twist on your line versus using just a straight eye like that and tying a knot directly to it. Therefore, your line is pulling the weight vertical without being offset a little, which can lead to that line twist. So for me, if I am using, say, something like this, and that's all I have, I'll actually take another hook and I'll open that up. I'll just put the hook through it and I'll give it a nice pull and I'll open that up so you can see it right there. And then I'll tie my line directly to the top. Just something that I personally prefer to do. If you like the line being pinched and broken off, go for it, stick with it. It's all about confidence on this channel. If that's what you prefer, stick with it. If you don't like it, you can easily open those up like I just did. Okay, so let's talk about tungsten versus lead. Now, a couple of things with tungsten that I want to point out. So if you're throwing, say, this Picasso tapered cylinder shape, one of the keys here is this cylinder shape, because it's narrower in size, actually falls much faster through the water column. So if you're using tungsten over lead, the same size weight, so this is actually a quarter ounce, this is a quarter ounce as well. Both of these you would think would fall at the same rate of speed. It's not actually true, because the bigger bulk and mass of the lead will actually fall slower. Meaning, if you're looking for a faster fall, your tungsten weights will get your bait down to the bottom much faster. It's a critical element in your drop shot fishing, depending on the situation that you're at. A lot of times it's about how fast can you get your bait back down in front of the fish, which is going to get you additional bites. Another thing to keep in mind with your tungsten, because it's harder, you get a much different sound on the bottom. You get a much louder kind of dinking, clacking sound as your tungsten weight is going over the bottom, versus a lead, which is a much creates a much duller kind of thumping sound. It can really be beneficial, in my opinion, if you're fishing hard bottom areas, to use a tungsten weight that creates additional sound and therefore can draw fish to it. But with that, with the hardness of the tungsten, it also gives you a much, much better feel of the bottom composition. So if you're really trying to identify what it is that's on the bottom that you're fishing, you can get much better sensitivity out of this weight, which transfers up the line into your rod. So it gives you a much better idea as to where your bait is actually on the bottom. So those three main factors come into your decision between lead and tungsten: your feel, your sound, and how fast you want your bait to get to the bottom. To me, those are the most critical. So if I'm looking to fish, say, an Ozark style lake, where I'm probably fishing deeper, I'm probably fishing around rock, I'm going to be choosing a tungsten weight, because I want it to get down faster and I want to be able to feel that rock, as well as create some additional sound as it's being dragged over that. If I'm fishing a soft bottom area, so maybe I'm fishing a backwater on a river that's a mud bottom area, a lot of times I'll actually choose to go with lead, because sound's not going to come into play. I'm not going to feel anything because it's soft bottom. And at the same time, the larger bulk of the lead will actually prevent the weight from falling further down into that mud. So if I'm not looking to get my bait stuck in the mud, I'll actually prefer lead, because it's bigger and bulkier, and therefore it sits on top of the mud better than, say, a heavier, slender weight like this tungsten weight, which would actually penetrate into the mud. So there's definitely times and places. Now for me, generally speaking, because I really do like this tapered cylinder look, if I'm fishing around grass, this is the shape, and I'm going to go with tungsten, because I want a smaller profile, gets down into the grass, comes out of the grass easy, which is really the key. It's not a matter of getting down into the grass, it's getting your bait clean out of the grass. So I'll definitely go with tungsten in that situation. If I'm fishing around rock, going with tungsten. If I'm fishing very deep, I'm going with tungsten. If I'm fishing mud bottom, generally we'll go with lead. And a lot of times if I'm fishing around wood, I'll also throw lead, because I'm not getting much additional sound out of it. I know I'm fishing around the wood, so I don't necessarily need the feel of it. But more importantly, again, it goes with that bulk. If I've got a little bit bigger bulk, that will help sometimes in terms of the number of snags that I'm getting if I'm fishing a laydown. So if you've got a lot of branches that are tangled around or that are crossing, if you've got a smaller weight, sometimes it gets stuck more in those branches that are crisscrossing, and therefore you're getting snagged more. So I will go with lead in that situation quite a bit as well. But it really comes down to the situation. I'm not strictly a tungsten guy, not strictly a lead guy. I would say I throw tungsten the majority of the time, because I do think the benefits of it outweigh that of lead. But there are definitely situations where I generally will throw lead over the tungsten as well. But you got to take into account all the different variables that you're fishing, and is one of the two types going to give you an advantage in terms of the number of fish that you're going to catch. I think if you kind of take this, utilize it to the lakes and the rivers that you like to fish, you might find that it actually helps you catch a few additional fish as well. So next time you're fishing a drop shot, don't only get concerned with the bait, don't only get concerned with the leader length or your hook style. Really consider the weight that you're using, because that is a huge part of the success that you're going to have with your drop shots. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.